Well, hi, everybody. It's November 10th, the day before Remembrance Day. I've got my poppy on here. You can see that. And this is the ROI group. It's our last ROI group meeting of 2021. We don't meet in December. It's kind of family time, Christmas time, whatever. So the next one won't be until January. So you don't have to put up with any emails from me, at least on the ROI group, until sometime in early 2022. I hope tomorrow, November 11th, which is Remembrance Day, you'll all sort of remember to, be thankful to those who sacrificed so much so we can have so much. I'm very grateful. And I'm sure many of the people, all the people on the call are grateful to the people who sacrificed so much. Yeah, Chris, thanks for giving us the thumbs up there. I appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to introduce we have two special guests. I'm going to introduce them in a few minutes, but I'm going to share my screen with you because I always do a little bit of an introduction. So let me just see if I can share my screen with you guys, and I'll show you a couple of things that I wanted to mention as well. I wanted to thank everybody who attended this year, but also especially two people, Steve Shepard, who's been my longtime attorney and lawyer, who's bailed me out of so many situations, and he's a sponsor of the ROI group. He's a founding partner at SKS Law. And today he's closing another financing for me. This one is a construction financing, and I just couldn't do what I do as effortlessly as it can be done without Steve and his great team. And one of the things I talked to Steve about when I transferred my legal affairs to his firm 14 or 15 years ago now, was I asked him not to be late on closings and transactions, not just for me, but for the people I've recommended to him over the years. And he's kept his word to me. It's really important. So I want to thank Steve for all of the work he's done for me and for being a sponsor of the group. I also want to thank Matt Slobodian. Matt is now moving to Ottawa from Winnipeg. He is probably Canada's leading expert in CMHC financing. And when he tells me he's done, another $50 million multi-res building, which we're going to talk a little bit about today with Tim in a minute, at 1.2% or whatever it is, for a guy who's old enough, I'll be 70 in 3 weeks, by the way, for a guy who's old enough to remember the 80s and 13% mortgages, and 18% interest rates, when I hear, mortgages at 1.2% is like free money. And Matt's also a supporter of the ROI group and a sponsor, and I'm very, very grateful to Matt for doing that. And I strongly recommend, if you're doing any kind of a multi-res, that you talk to Matt. I think he's the biggest shooter in this space in Canada. I'm pretty sure about that. And he's moving to Ottawa too, which is cool. Let me see. So as we get closer to the end of the year, I just wanted to share with you, again, before I introduce our special guest today, a couple things I do. So I always spend, or try to spend, between Christmas and New Year's, I try not to work at my daily job, which is coaching and being a realtor and being a dad too. I guess that's a 24/7, 365 job. But on the workaday side, I try and get a little bit of time off, and I want to focus on my goals. And I think it's something that I recommend to other people, that you spend some time setting goals for yourself. I certainly do. I do it every year. But first, what I do, and this is not brainiac stuff, this is just what I do. I look at the 5 things that I accomplished this year. So I try and be a little positive. Sometimes I have a few failures, but often there's some accomplishments to celebrate. And I try and see if I can find at least 5 that I set out to do and accomplished, and celebrate them a little bit, at least privately and by myself. So top 5 things that you accomplished this year, write them down sometime between Christmas and New Year's. And then ask yourself what you're going to do next year. What are the top 5 goals? If you have 50 goals for next year, it's too many, in my opinion. You can't really keep track of 50 different things, at least I can't. So I found that 4 or 5 is probably my limit, and maybe yours too. Write down what you would like to achieve and refer to it, pretty much every month next year. you know, these are the 5 things I set out to do. Are they still my top 5 goals? Am I getting closer to achieving them? So if you don't have any metrics or you don't have any goals, then how do you know if you're wasting your time? One of the things I got really good at as I got older and more experienced is not turning in tight little circles. Sometimes what happens is you think you're making progress, you're moving forward, but really you're just, you know, you're inside your head, you're turning in circles, you're really not achieving anything. So if you have some goals and you set out to achieve them, that helps. And then I wanted to show you also something really, really, really simple. Okay, and again, most of my stuff is, again, not brainiac stuff, it's simple stuff, but this really works for real estate. This is very simple. So each one of the numbers at the top of the screen are years, you know, year 1, 2, 3, times 0 is obviously today. And where do you want to be in real estate if you're building a real estate portfolio over the next 12 years? And what I've done is I've developed this to give you, again, a framework for establishing a goal, and over sort of a reasonable period of time, which is 12 years, in real estate. Now you look at this form and say, what the heck, Bruce, how does it work? Well, some of you have already seen it, but I'll show you one that I did with a young fellow. I think he's 30 years of age. And if you look in year 0, which is the column on the far left, he owns his principal residence, which was valued at about $750,000, but it doesn't make any income, right? So he decided he was going to add a micro suite. He's going to get a little bit of rent for it, I guess $10,000 a year. And so his cap rate is 1.3%. For those of you who've been following my teachings, you know that's pretty low. I don't want you to buy anything that doesn't produce at least a 6% cap rate, hopefully a bit more. But after he adds a micro suite, he'll be making a little bit of net operating income, $10,000. All right. Now, then he tells me that he bought a condo in Gatineau, Quebec, which is across the border from Ottawa. And we came up with a couple of animations, and he figures this one will achieve a 6% cap rate and will produce $12,000 of net operating income. So after year 1, he's got about $22,000 a year, so not quite $2,000 a month from his portfolio in terms of net operating income. And then he likes a simple model. Some of the models I've developed over the years are pretty friggin' complicated, but he just wanted to buy, you know, some simple bungalows or half doubles or townhouses, put a basement apartment in it, and buy a bunch of those. And it has about a 7% cap rate. So he's going to buy one of these every year for, I don't know, however many years there are. And if you look at the column on the far left, it means by the end of year 12, after he's bought a number of these very simple buildings that he can duplex, he'll be at around almost $335,000 a year net operating income. Now, everybody knows that net operating income is not necessarily cash in your jeans because you still have to pay your mortgages from that, right? You paid everything else except your mortgage. But once your mortgages are paid off, once Jack pays off his mortgages, he will have $335,000 a year in his jeans. And that's how he developed his target. And you notice up here, we're talking about buying 1 Mimi per year. What the heck is a Mimi? Well, I'll show you on the next slide what a Mimi is. Well, a Mimi is my daughter. No, he's not buying my daughter. He's buying a house like my daughter. So that's what I mean by a Mimi, okay? And this is a half double, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, half double with a single car garage that she bought for $335,000 4 years ago. And then I think on the right hand side, yeah, you can see that this was the condition of the basement. It had a walkout condition, and she added a basement apartment there, and that cost her about $80,000 to do. It produces over $30,000 a year of net operating income. So every time you buy a Mimi, you've got $30,000 worth of income. So if you want, say, $300,000 of net operating income after you paid off all your mortgages, you need to buy 10 Mimis. That's kind of what Jack was looking at, and it's a pretty good way of measuring things. I knew a realtor who was a bit of a dubious individual. I'm not talking about myself, who used to measure his deals in BMWs. You bought me, Bruce, 4 BMWs this time, or you bought me 2. he was pretty obnoxious, but that's how he measured it. So what what we do is we measure them in mimes. All right, so that's a way to measure things. And then I did put a few pictures of the basement apartment she added, which was quite nice. All right, that's enough for me for now. So I get to introduce Tim. Wave hi, Tim, just so everybody can see you. That's Tim Streek here, and he's become a good friend. I really mean it. Two of the toughest questions I get are, can you recommend a home builder or builder, Bruce? And can you recommend a website developer? And both are tough questions for me to answer because both have turned out to be, well, it's difficult because they quite often fail. And if you recommend somebody and they fail at the job, then of course it looks bad on me as a coach or as a realtor. So I'm pretty careful with my recommendations. I do recommend Matt Slobodian, from Canada ICI, and Steve Shepard from SKS Law, because they have proven that they can do the job. And so has Tim. And we're going to talk about KB Media a little bit later. So what are the problems that come up with builders, home builders, commercial builders, institutional builders? They tend to be over budget. They tend to deliver their projects late, and they have tons of deficiencies, which sometimes take a heck of a long time to fix. And the last one I put in caps there is they're non-responsive, right? You guys know if you have a contractor, a renovator, a builder, sometimes they go missing for weeks or months at a time. And I can tell you, knowing Tim like I do, that that's not the case. He's the founder of TSH Development Group, and he's built everything: custom homes, two-story sixplexes, four-story 32-unit buildings, underground parking and elevators. I mean, it's amazing. And we're working, Tim and I are working on 3 projects. One you can see at the top is a brand new vet clinic to be built in Canada. It's going to be fabulous. It's about 5,400 square feet. About 500 square meters. It's going to be fantastic. Tim is doing a beautiful executive custom home. And in terms of being non-responsive, he's bailing me out. I'm going to see if you can see this. He's bailing me out on one of my little favorite projects. Tim, can you read this?
Cabin in the Woods.
There you go. I built this little cabin in the woods for one of my daughters. And we had very nice contractors working on it for quite some time, and one of them has gone non-responsive. He went down to Nashville, I think, to party a little bit, and we haven't heard from him since. So I had to turn to Tim. It's a tiny project, but he bailed me out. And you need people like that, right? If you find people that you like and trust, and they can deliver, that is a fantastic, unbelievable opportunity. So I'm now going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. I'm going to switch to now, just give me a second. I'm going to switch to your presentation, Tim, and I'm going to turn it over to you in a moment, because I think people have heard probably enough from me. So bear with me for a second. I'll share my screen, and everybody, welcome Tim Streek.
Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity, Bruce. Thanks for the very warm introduction. And, it's funny, before I talk a bit here about myself and our development group, the goal setting, that wasn't part of my expectation here at the beginning, but boy, that was something. And I'll talk a bit about my transition, fitting that it be prior to, I guess, Remembrance Day, having spent 21 years in the Air Force and in the Department of National Defense before transitioning here. But the goal setting, and that is huge. It was huge for me. I got to be honest with you. I have a binder of goal setting documentation that I ripped off the internet, and I spent probably 2 to 3 months at the infancy of all of this in deep diving goals, and not just business goals. I think I had 10 categories of goals: personal goals, goals as a dad, goals as a businessman, that kind of thing. So huge, absolutely. If you've got no path, you're not going to get anywhere. So thanks for that. Well, again, thanks for the opportunity to be here this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you my vantage point. Real estate investment is something I think we all value. I'm going to present to you the direction, the path path that I took, where my goals led me in new construction. And so together we'll explore the merits of the design and build process of the real estate investment versus purchase, right? So I won't spend much time talking about a purchase, but I'll make connections to things like renovations and adding, basement apartments and that kind of thing, because there are some connections. Just as a personal background, who, how, and why. So I alluded to it. I was born and raised in New Brunswick from two Dutch immigrant parents. Both my parents came over on the boat from Holland, effectively born just after the war. And so born and raised in New Brunswick, my dad had a business building kitchen cabinets. And that's really where I should say without much choice, got my start in construction. I spent a lot of time in the shop. At $5 an hour cleaning it to start, and then by 12 I was on an open spindle shaper making raised panel cabinet doors. And you imagine what your 12-year-old is doing now. That's what I did then. But I think most importantly, if I gave my dad a high five, he wasn't everything, but he certainly taught me how to work. And I think that's a key tenet too of where we go with what we have, the gifts and talents that we have, is the ability to employ them. So finished high school there. I had interest in sort of service as a whole. I had my feet in the RCMP and emergency response, but ultimately chose to apply to the Royal Military College in Kingston. Was an acceptee there and finished a 4-year mechanical engineering degree program after that. So in second year, I actually, with my new drafting skills, I designed my own home, which was a 6-dormer Cape Cod that we ended up building after I graduated in New Brunswick on a large lake there. My first experience, learned lots there, but always kind of being willing to try new things and to learn as I do. That has its risks, but that was my approach. So real quickly spent about 10, 12 years actively flying helicopters for the Army in our special operations organization in and around the Petawawa area, which is why I'll share with you what we've done and designed. A lot of it has been in the Upper Ottawa Valley. And then finished out as a lieutenant colonel in the procurement side of Department of National Defense. And there's where I realized it was time to go. If you spend any time in public service here in Ottawa, you'll chuckle with me and you'll know why that is. But let's leave it there. All to say, as I transition to TSH, a little background on TSH. Tri-Service Holdings is what that stands for. It's not Tim Streek Homes, as some have suggested. Tri-Service is my connection with desiring some 10 years before, 10 years ago, about 5 to 6 years before I retired, desiring to create an investment platform and investment opportunities for my colleagues in the service. And if you know your military in Canada, there's 3 services. At the time, there was 3 services: Army, Navy, and Air Force. And so Tri-Service was that connection. My interest to create investment opportunities with other colleagues, other shareholders, and on their behalf while they were busy doing other important things. That was the first corporate structure that we created. TSH now, Tri-Service Holdings, has been relegated to its passive existence as a proper shareholder entity. And now our development group is our corporation, our operating business that deals with liability and things. So that TSH Development Group is the entity that builds on TSH, the holdings company's behalf. One thing I think we all acknowledge, and again, I like the goals of a 12-year investment portfolio collection. The challenge in all that is finding capital, right? Chapter 2 of every real estate book is, what do I do when I run out of my own money? And we'll talk a little bit about how that propagates. But for me, that was my challenge. I love to build. I love to build new, and I needed to figure out, how do I continue to do what I do, learn what I do best, and provide that. And I realized simple syndication. It's not complicated. A group of 4 or 5 folks in a corporation as shareholders, clumping money together so that I can do what I promised them I'll do. and we end up with a great new construction project as a result. So that's where I went with it. And so we'll walk through this agenda. We've got a framework and focus, what we focus on in our development group and why. We'll talk about the merits of new construction versus existing buildings. There's some obvious ones there, but we'll touch on them briefly. The design process prior to construction, the construction process itself, talk about costs and timelines. And then we'll sort of bounce and use our most recent build for its unique placement and things in the 32 unit that we just finished in August in Deep River, Ontario. So if you know Deep River, you know your Ontario landscape, that's the bedroom community for Chalk River and Canadian Nuclear Laboratories in that area north of Petawawa. All right, next slide. All right, so framework and focus. It's important to share what we do and why that's what we focus on. And Bruce asked us, like, give an explanation as to why you do what you do and why you don't do other things. So we focus very specifically on low-rise multi-residential and expressly new construction. I'll be honest with you, I've only ever renovated a single fourplex. We added a couple of units. The truth is my mom lives in that in Belleville, and that's the reason. I wanted her to have a safe, warm, and comfortable new place to live. Other than that, over about 8 projects in the last 7 years to the tune of about just under $40 million and about 140 units. We have built 6plexes to 32 unit buildings, increasing over time. But what we've stuck with are the following. We build it with wood frame. We build conventional, simple, and safe. And I don't mean safe as in fall safe. I mean safe as in risk safe. We'll talk about risk a fair bit today, but that is the key tenet. I think all of it boils down to the trade space and comfortability with materials and techniques. Building unique, special, equals cost. And I think we would all agree that it's important to build what your rent rates will sustain. If you're building beyond that, you're building for free. And then that's really disappointing when you get to the end of it. So you want to make sure that what you're building makes sense, balanced against your rent rate and your target tenant. So that's what we do. And if someone were to ask, why don't you build with steel and concrete? Steel is kind of an overlap with wood frame and concrete. Concrete is certainly well suited for medium and high rise, and it's certainly a great fire protection sort of material. But for us, where I've started from and where I think we focus well is in wood frame. It's what I know. It's what I can calculate from a cost factor point of view. It's what I know my trade space is comfortable with. And I'll talk a little bit later, but boy, is there ever value in building the same thing over and over again, right? When you talk about risk again and you drive risk to zero, it's impossible to drive it to zero. But when you're trying to drive it to zero, doing this something over and over again produces lessons learned and techniques and approaches that you can bank on. And in fact, you can take to the lender and they can bank on it, no pun intended. So that's why we do what we do. And that's also why we don't do other things. It's not to say we haven't built with steel studs in like commercial veins, but from our multi-res investment side, this is what we focus on. The other key thing is target location and tenant. I won't spend much time on location. I think we all agree that's important. But target tenants are also a key driver in what you design. Remembering I'm designing what we're building, so I get to figure out who we're building it for, right? When you build a building, when you buy a building, you don't always get to pick your target tenant or change the functionality of the property to suit. For me, I get to design it all around my target tenant. So all of the real estate principles that you and I know apply. I have focused on what I refer to as the downsizing senior. The downsizing senior is someone that is an empty nester, has been for a while. They're not necessarily health driven or accessibility challenged, but they are tired of maintenance and tired of doing things around the house that they would rather not do. And so a downsizing senior doesn't require a fully barrier-free building, but they do definitely benefit from we'll call accessibility features in a new building. And of course, with a new building, I can offer that, right? Basic ramp access, good wide corridors, and an elevator are a staple of our buildings. We do have a couple of purpose-built student buildings. Algonquin College, for example, in Pembroke is built to one of 2 satellite campuses beside the main building and college here in Ottawa. And we own 2 buildings immediately across the street to service those students. The other key thing is in communities that need it. You've heard my background. I've spent a fair bit of time in the Upper Ottawa Valley, so I know that area well. And the truth is, after rent control, a lot of communities haven't benefited from good quality and newer multi-res development. And those communities want it, and they're motivated to bring it. And so outside of a tertiary or primary market like Ottawa, there are a lot of markets that really need good multi-residential housing, and affordable is a separate discussion for a separate day. But certainly, this type of thing for downsizing seniors in communities all over Ontario is a requirement. Our focus is entirely build and hold. I don't build to sell. I build because I am a key part of the ownership as well as the builder. So our main tenant, whenever we market and create these types of corporations around these types of projects, is always build and hold. Legal structures around each. Some folks use a limited partnership. We've chosen corporations. Either of them limit the liability associated outside of each project. So each of our buildings is its own corporation. We pay a little more on accounting and legal fees each year, but the truth is it saves us from translating liability from one project to the next. And we manage whatever we build. I don't manage anybody else's buildings, but I manage all of my own. It's a good revenue stream, but it's also a savings, an arguable savings from a sort of a percentage of cost to the shareholders, because I know the building, I know what's in the building, I know the people that built the building, on a very short string to me, so warranty issues aren't an issue. And of course, again, we have, it's a bit of a revenue stream for our development group. Investment returns, key to anything. We'll talk about our development cycle shortly, but these are the three key tenets. I like an investment, a three-legged stool. It's probably a poor analogy, but every investment, every real estate investment has three legs. The first leg is typically, your cash flow, right? You want to have a positive cash flow, or you want to have a plan to get to positive cash flow. The second is appreciation. You want to know that where you're building is not depreciating, that it's headed in a positive direction over time. And then, of course, the basic tenet of someone else paying your mortgage down, which means your equity builds up without you having to put funds into it, right? The key for new construction is value in year one. So the secret, and I'll share it with you, it's proprietary, so you can't tell anybody. But I can build, and any lenders on the line, by the way, including ones that I might have to deal with in the near term, I can build for 75% of the appraised value. So let's take my 32 unit at the end of this slideshow, which is the 4-story in Deep River. That's appraised at $9 million. We built it for 6.4. I just finished the post-construction report. Fantastic. Right. So add the $500,000 of land and soft costs. I'm at 7. So right away, our shareholder group owns $2 million worth of paper value. Now it's value, right? It's, again, we build and hold, but in the same breath, knowing that we're already starting a few rungs down the ladder in paying down that mortgage is huge. You're not going to get that from a regular general contractor. You're going to get the full pop. And the reason why I'm at the center of the design team, one of the values is that as a shareholder, I'm ensuring that the rest of the group is, I have skin in the game, but I'm building well with quality, balancing in the design phase functionality versus aesthetics, because the architects can get out of hand. But we have that value to start. So right away, we're looking good. Thereafter, our tear line, sort of our go, no go criteria for year 2 plus cash flow is 10%. In other words, cash on cash, I'm able to provide dividends to our shareholders at 10% of what we've got in. And it's a difficult number to show because, again, I've just told you in the first line that if the bank's lending me, if the bank expects me to have 25% in on a project and lending me the other 75%, I'm just showing you that I have no money in it, and the bank is providing me every dollar I need, right? So it's not perfect that way. Sometimes we keep a small amount in just based on equity and just showing the source of funds. But either way, the 10% return tear line is an important in-year value. So again, back to our case study, I can tell you that over the 32 units as a pure cash in our pocket after mortgage is paid, we're at about $140K a year. So that's a shareholder's return divvied up over the small group of shareholders, typically 5 to 7 shareholders, but that's our cash flow. Then, of course, you have your long-term equity buildup with mortgage pay down that everybody values from in this. And commercial lending is a little different than residential. Typically, I can get up to 75% loan to value, whereas if you're buying a duplex, you're probably better at 80 to 85%. Of course, if you're using CMHC, you're even better than that, right? So those are our tenants. That's what we look at and what we focus on in doing what we do well. Next slide, Bruce.
Just before I flip slides, Michael out in BC says, when are you coming to British Columbia to build our 800 units?
Right. So, but you heard me, and it's an important thing. Is I think all real estate investors, and I'm just going to say this because it's my opinion, should find something that they like, that they do well, get to know it, and continue to do it. It's not as exciting to do something different every year. But trust me, when you're driving your risk to zero, you'll have all that cash flow to go charter a yacht off whatever beach you want. Do that as excitement, but do what you do in investment methodically and deliberately and repeatedly, because that's where you optimize your returns, right? If you build a 4-story 1 year and then I move to concrete construction and try to match Claridge's 60-story building here on Dow's Lake, I'm going to trip over myself all year long, right? And so learn the hard way, and I'll speak to this slide here now, but learn the hard way initially if you have to, but value from those lessons. In the military, we have a concept called lessons learned. And after every military exercise or operation, we would stop, pause as a team, and go through a lessons learned exercise. And I would joke, we'd chuckle at the operational level, because they generate this beautiful spreadsheet of lessons learned, and it would never show up in the next year when you did the same exercise, right? So my argument is not lessons learned, it's lessons applied. You don't get to learn them if you haven't truly used them later and applied them and valued from them. So make sure that you're applying your lessons, not just capturing them. And you really can't do that unless you're doing the same thing over and over again. Okay.
Hang on a second, Tim. Michael,
Yep.
Did you want to add something?
No, I'm good. That's wonderful. Thank you.
All right. You can go back to muting yourself then.
Thank you.
Tim, just as a word, I completely agree with what you are telling me and telling our group, that find something you like to do, hopefully you love to do it, and repeat it over and over and over again, because you get really, really good at it. If you're building office buildings and then you decide I'm going to build shopping plazas, you're building shopping plazas, you decide I'm going to build multi-res. Those three asset classes that I just mentioned are as different as running a shoe store. It's not comparable. And so I want to say to the group and anybody listening to this, the recorded version of this, that Tim is not just right, he's 100% right.
Well, I've proved it. And when I say that, I don't say that with arrogance. I say that with humility and the challenges of having learned those lessons. So if you're different than me, because I always learn just the hard way, if you're different from me, learn lessons from others. So new construction versus existing, and I'm not putting existing down. I'm merely describing my path. And maybe it's because I grew up in a windy farmhouse, but I really wanted to be, I really enjoyed the construction experience and the design that goes with it. So this is where I focus. So pros and cons in new construction, and again, I haven't laid out the value of purchasing existing properties because, this is my path and I'm sharing it with you. But pros on new construction, I can build better. And by that, I mean, the standard difference between a 40-year-old building and a new building. I get to value from all the new building code requirements, all of the new techniques and materials that exist to give you better efficiencies on many fronts. I can build cheaper, and I've described that because I am a shareholder and the builder, which means I can tell the architect to stop going down a certain road because it's a fancy high glazed front elevation and we don't need it, right? So I can build cheaper. I can control the design phase. So in the same way, I make sure that the approaches I use all high efficiency mini split, ductless mini splits in my apartments. I have no major components in my building that cap out after 10 years and have a major replacement cost. The most expensive thing I replace in any of my buildings is the roof shingles, right? So I have no big boilers. I have no big pumps or systems that require that kind of thing. And I do that for a reason. So I never have to carry a sort of an in operations phase budget that has to be added to over time to pay for things that may fall apart. Obviously, advantages in energy efficiencies, that's key for both operating costs as well as construction costs. I get to optimize the property, highest and best use. I know that's an acronym we use in this group. Optimizing the property to make sure that I can get what I want on it and make good use of it. And I think here, just being careful on how I describe the quality of a tenant, because that's an important thing to make sure we protect. Everybody deserves affordable placement. When I've described my target tenant as a downsizing senior and in new construction, these projects benefit from the highest rents in the area. I repeatedly set the impact rent rates for the regions by with new construction there. So those are pros. Cons, I can't highlight enough how risks of construction are important, and to suggest that this is easy is absolutely false. And but I do believe in the tenant that if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? There's a picture but to the bottom right there. If you look close, that is my 4-story 16-unit apartment building that's right across the street from the new Algonquin College campus in Pembroke. So we'll talk about timelines of construction and things. This is a picture taken in November. So when you build a building like this, as a purpose-built student building, you'll instantly understand that I need to have this building ready and occupiable before the fall semester, correct? So unlike another apartment, another target tenant, this student building needs to be ready at that time. So you back off the time you need to build a project like this, which is 14 to 15 months, and you start that time frame based on the finish date. In this case, it was the next year in September. This is November the previous year. As you can tell if you look close, all of the windows and the entire top of the roof is burned. This was 5 months into construction. At the end of November, I got a call at 6:30 in the morning from my plumber saying, "Tim, your building is on fire." And you can Google it. It's on CBC. The short story is a kid broke in, ran up to looking for sort of some snatch and grab, get some cash for tools and things, kicked over a space heater on a metal box frame, and ultimately from 3 to 6 in the morning sort of led to a slow burn. And I lost 2 floors, and what the fire didn't take, the fire hoses took, and the whole building had to be gutted. So you can imagine, right, in terms of risk of construction and challenges, this, although it's not common, I think we all saw the 12 unit that burned a few weeks ago in Canada. It can exist, and although there's an insurance policy there, the risk is not just cost, it's also time. If I had not been able to rehab this building in order to get it done, having lost all of that progress in time for September, my building would have stood empty. Everybody works on a 1-year lease, so all of that would have been lost. And it takes some leadership and a gathering of the troops. And when you have really great sub trades, everybody said, "Yeah, Tim, we understand it. We're going to get it done for you." And I continue to give them the accolades for getting us back on track. And in fact, finishing this building in August, a full month before we needed it in September.
Tim, we have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll go with Linda's first. So there's no common air ductwork. Is that correct? Another selling point in a COVID environment.
Correct. Mostly. So all of the units have their own self-contained mini split system. So really good for 1,000 square feet and less. Not very good for much more than that, unless you're just heating and cooling a small area like a basement or a granny suite. So you're right. In the hallways, though, in the common areas, I do have HRVs dedicated to overpressurizing the hallways. So if I'm cooking craft dinner, but you're cooking curry, the HRV pressurizes the hallway to keep those smells in each unit. And so those systems are connected to exchange the air as an HRV system does. But you're right, no major boiler, no major large ductwork, that's all. And the beauty of it is these things are all run on remote controls. Europe is full of them. And so the tenants love the ability to control their own heat and AC. And of course, they're super high efficiency. They have a high SEER rating. Highly recommend anything 1,000 square feet and less. I can even point you to my supplier in Montreal who has a great deal for you if you.
There you go. And Tim, another question from Christian. Don't you have a large capital cost to replace all of the heat pumps? And then there's the second part of it. I've been told by energy engineers that central systems are more efficient in the long-term capital costs. So exactly the opposite of what you were recommending a moment ago.
So I've had some buildings for upwards of 10 years now, and I've never replaced a unit. if I did have to, the whole unit, 2 heads in the inside and a condenser on the outside, is $1,500. So in terms of cost, a boiler for this building would probably be about $125,000 plus the ductwork and that to run it. So I can tell you that if I ever have a problem, I'm swapping a component on someone's suite or on someone's balcony in 2 hours. I certainly aren't shutting down the whole building because I'm out of heat because the boiler's down, right? So there's costs per, you maybe could make a cost comparison, but there's also a convenience and a flexibility and an appeal to the tenant as well. But I can tell you that I'm stuck on mini splits. So here's the downside. Look at that bottom picture. See how the condensers hanging off the side of the building? They're not pretty. So everything has a plus and a minus. Okay, so sorry, just back up a little bit there. Just one or two more comments, Bruce. So scope, schedule, cost overruns. We'll talk about that in the construction, but that is definitely a con. When you buy a building like this, if I were to sell you this building, you forego any risk of scope, schedule, cost. All of that is already in the past, and obviously you don't have to deal with it. You pay full pop, but in the same breath, you don't have to deal with that, right? Due diligence, liability, same thing. I can tell you that, a lot of the challenge in the soft cost side of these types of projects is in the lending and the leasing. And these things get easier the more folks believe in you, the more partnerships you build on the lending side. But the second you walk away from a tertiary, from a primary market, and you head to a secondary market, in the case of our case study in Deep River, no one had built a major multi-res building like that since the 50s, since SNC-Lavalin had originally created that town. So trying to explain to a high tower in Toronto why they should lend me $6.5 million in Deep River took a lot of hoops. And I'm grateful for the background that we had and the relationships that we had with the lenders, but it was not easy. And that. So the one thing leasing wise, I'm proud to say that because I think we've done well on marketing, but also the right location and the right finishes in the building, we've always managed every single project we've ever done has been fully leased before we occupy. So there's been no lease up phase. We've been fully occupied before we were complete.
Man, that's incredible.
Okay, so the design phase, just a couple of key comments here. So there's my own cycle of new development. That's not ripped off from anywhere. It may very well, show up somewhere else in a book or something, but the truth is it's fairly straightforward. But what's important for this group, I think, if you consider multi-res or new construction at all, conceive, the very first phase of that. I see so many times where folks get past the design almost to the build, right? To the point where they're submitting building permit applications and they haven't thought about things like feasibility. They don't really know what their target tenant is. They don't know what their target lease rate is. They're not sure how much things are actually going to cost. They haven't got any fixed costs or a good, solid, in-depth construction budget, but yet you've paid the $150,000 to get the building designed. Right. So then you introduce a builder who says, whoa, they told you what? And before you know it, you're either increasing your cost, your budget, or you're going back and spending more money in design to make something less expensive. So spend the time in conceive. Don't proceed past conceive without understanding feasibility. Don't get to the design phase unless you know what you really want to build. One thing's for sure, every municipality is different. We know in the great city of Ottawa that a site plan and sort of the progression towards a build can take up to 3 years. And that's if you color within the lines, you're probably 1 to 2 years. But if you're going to go to OMB or some sort of a site plan or minor variation requirement outside of the norm, you're up to 3. Hydro 1, as an example, takes 12 months to process power for a building like the one you see below, just by virtue of its hierarchy in its process, right? There's no Hydro 2, so no one is obligated to do anything faster. So just make sure you understand your process in the design phase. Yep.
Is it okay with you? Some people would like to talk to you about some of their projects after this is over. Is it okay if I put your contact information in the chat box?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine. Conscious of everybody's time here, I'll press on. So obviously in this phase, you really want to have your property purchased. You don't want to be guessing with the design phase and still closing the deal. You certainly want to carry in mind a cost of demolition and any sort of site plan requirements. Don't underestimate the cost of site planning, report studies, utilities. I think we're somewhere in a decent project in Ottawa. You're not less than 150, probably closer to 200K, just in terms of site planning reports and requirements to get to a point where you can start designing the building. Okay. Obviously, the design team, and from my perspective, it was key that I be at the very center, the nucleus of the design team, providing direction, providing sort of a little bit of tugging on the reins to various folks, and making sure that the municipal staff and the relationships there are well set as well. That saves a lot of money all along the path towards the building design. Next step, or sorry, next slide. So not dwelling on the construction process so much, it's not the point of this, but a couple of key things: building permits and development charges. Those are not insignificant costs. Development charges, interestingly enough, were sort of a cash grab at the municipal level for many. You know, for example, why does a custom home in South Manotick that requires a well and septic on the property still cost me $13,000 in development charges? What, for the benefit of garbage removal and to plow the road? So, you know, that thing that is expensive. It's something that's it exists. In our case study, Deep River wanted no holdback to development, and they have no development charges. That's $100 grand for a building like that, typically, that didn't have to be spent, right? Scope, schedule, and cost, those are the basic tenets of any project. As a PMP, that's what we work in. I think important, obviously, the scope is what is your building and who's doing what in that. Schedule, I think, is important to understand. Sometimes you're designing your construction process backwards. So you're saying, who's my target tenant? When do they want to move? And then how long my building project is going to take. And that defines your start date. Not always, but often. And in the case of the downsizing senior, you know, they have a house to sell. They're selling to a family who's wanting to move in the summer so their kids can start in the fall. So move-in has to be in the summer, in August, right? So that means that with a 15 or a 16-month project, you back that time off. You can't ignore the winter. So you start the year prior and look to be weather tight before the snow flies too much, so that you can make progress on the inside without being too much affected. Cost, I think the most important thing in cost is contingency. Everybody knows things cost money, but I think my first bullet there is hope in a budget is not helpful. In the military, we used to say hope is not a COR, hope is not a course of action. And a lot of people tend to do it subconsciously, right? You say, boy, I hope that's not going to cost, or you think you might have to have a drop ceiling, but you choose not sort of to ignore it. Oh, maybe I won't, right? That's really unhelpful, and it leads to disappointment. It leads to a lot of stress in the back half of the project. Contingency is everything. Make sure you're carrying a fair budget, 5%, 10% maybe, for your project. If you've built the same building, you know, 4 times, and maybe your contingency is only 5%. I can tell you, I carried 10% on the 32 unit, and I'm glad we did. I spent $400,000 this past year for COVID overruns for building supplies. Yep. Right? I built that building before. I knew down to the 2x6 exactly what I needed. I didn't expect to pay $12 for a $6 2x6 though. Right? So contingency is always important, and use contingency with your schedule, not just your cost. If you think it's a 14-month project, don't plan to clean the building the week before the kids move in or your tenants move in, because there's always something. Carry a month, right? So build the same building repeatedly. We talked about that, but I'm telling you, that's a key part of our success, is learn from your process and continue to reuse that over and over again. For example, in our case study, that 32-unit building, that's $150,000 worth of design fees. I spent 60.
Wow.
Right? I saved almost 100 grand in design because I used the same team, and I said, guys, I'm asking you to change the address and the date stamp on the drawings. Right? And so you can gain value from that. You know, you can't always, but consider it. Communication up and down. It's everything. Anybody that does project management, communication is everything. Bruce mentioned in reviewing the slides, you know, what about post-construction deficiencies and warranty? For me, it's unique. I'm at the center of everything. I'm in the design phase. My PMs are building the project. I'm following along. So I have ownership as a shareholder and ownership as a builder to make sure deficiencies are cleaned up as quickly as possible. I also own the connections with the trades base, so warranties are provided and are honored, and the follow-up is there. They do a lot of work for me in various areas, so they have an interest in coming back on projects that exist to do it well. Breaking in a new building, a good thought process when you consider, again, our 32 unit building there in August. I have 32 people technically signing a lease for the 15th of August, all looking to move in on or around the same date, right? So that's a lot of people moving in, a lot of stuff in the same time frame. So it's very unique. You know, we manage our own property. So my leasing manager, once she's done leasing, she switches to sort of occupancy planning and works with each of the tenants to find the right date, to allocate the right stairwell, the right elevator, to coordinate with folks. After the first 2 weeks of move-in, typically the last 2 weeks of that first month are deficiencies. If it leaks or if it's tripping as a breaker, we want to know that right away. Otherwise, they generate a little list on their counter. We amalgamate that into efficient handyman type work. And I can tell you, with a building like that, after month one, it goes to absolute quietness. It's absolute beauty. Yeah, it's a great thing. Next slide.
So Tim,
Okay, so
Tim, we got about another 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm going to put KB Media on. Okay.
Yeah, and you know what? This is just a quick synopsis that we've touched on how this case study, this building, you know, it sort of exemplifies what we've done. It's the most recent one we finished. It was finished in August, a few months ago. So there you see it, one in the winter and one with the drywall going in the late spring. You know, we've talked about it already. 14 months through COVID was a challenge, but we worked through it. We had good contingency. Target tenants were all downsizing seniors. And the local housing committee in this case reached out to me and said, hey, could you do something like this in our community? We desperately need housing. So not just a financial value, but also a good moral and the right thing to do in that community. So it was a joy all around. Just the next slide is a few pictures of the common areas. Again, fairly standard, fresh, clean, light grays. And then the next slide is interior unit. Not the best pics, it's hard to see, but you know, again, fully accessible, open concept kitchen, stainless appliances. We provide new appliances with all of our units, and for folks, we tend to have walk-in showers because folks, you know, generally want that accessibility and need it a bit as they get older. So that's it. That's kind of, you know, the journey summed up with that last project. I know it's hard to jam all that in, but if there's interest in discussions and questions, happy to take them maybe by email afterwards. Bruce, up to you if you think that's helpful.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, the comments in the chat box were, wow, this guy is good. And I already knew that. And now a bunch of other people are going to know that too. People are saying, Mark saying, well done, Tim, beautifully done. So I did put Tim's information, contact information in the chat box. And I would strongly encourage people in the ROI group to reach out to Tim, because there's no question of all the builders I've known over the years, Tim is right at the top. You know, he doesn't do projects on the scale of PCL. I've done work with PCL, you know, which is a many $billion-a year corporation. But you know, for the kinds of stuff that most of the people in the ROI group do, you know, which is, you know, 4-story, 3-story buildings, you know, like this, you know, there's nobody better that I know of. And Tim, I don't know what to say. It was really fantastic. So people do have lots of questions for you. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do, this is so we can get on to our next presenters. And I don't want to keep everybody over time. We try and start on time, Tim, and we try and finish on time. So on behalf of the entire ROI group, the people who came today live and the people who will see it recorded later, it was just fantastic. Bravo.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. It's a passion of mine. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out. It's not a money thing. It's about helping us individually kind of pursue what we're excited about. So hopefully you've learned something here.
Yeah, fantastic. So what we're going to do next, after that excellent presentation, is we're going to talk about something that is almost, maybe it is as difficult to recommend as a builder, as a home builder, or you know, a commercial builder. And I sent out an email to everybody, I think earlier today. When I started my coaching practice 9 years ago now, I went through a number of website developers, and you know, the promises were fantastic. You know, your website will do everything. It'll look great. It'll be a great brand. Will drive traffic to it. You know, it'll do everything. It'll come to your house and make you tea every morning. Well, I remember one developer I spent $15,000 with, and it was so bad I had to scrap the site and start over. And so when Brad Cartier, I don't know if everybody remembers Brad, but Brad's a developer out in Rockland, Ontario, small town Ontario, very successful young man, a good father of four, and a good friend of mine, and a coaching client of mine too. When he recommended KB Media, that means a lot to me. And what I found really interesting when I talked to Mark Kelly, Craig Walsh, and Jonathan Bluam about KB Media is they're not just into a beautiful website that's highly branded, but it's also functional, and they know how to generate leads and traffic. So which of you guys from KB Media is going to take over from me now?
I'll start off first, and then Jonathan will lead in shortly after.
All right, this is great. Thank you, Mark. Hang on a second. I'll just blow up your slides. You know, my main function now is just as a slide mover. But again, to KB Media and to all of you, Mark and your colleagues, again, thank you so much for coming. And one last thing before I turn it over to you, Mark, I want to go back to Brad Cartier one more time. If you haven't subscribed to his weekly newsletter called Briefcase, it's a free weekly newsletter that Brad does. And he like, I'm not kidding. I call him a kid. He's not a kid. He's in his mid-30s. But Brad is a genius, and his weekly newsletters about real estate and real estate investment are fantastic. You actually go to briefcase.email. It's not briefcase.com or briefcase.ca. It's briefcase.email. That actually works. Briefcase.email. It's a free weekly newsletter. It's a hoot, and I learned a lot from it. Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Really great presentation. I'm right in the process of building a 6,000 square foot facility, commercial facility, and I can say it's been a challenge over the last 12 months. But there's a lot of good advice that I heard from Tim. So thank you very much, Tim.
Well, you know, his contact information is in the chat box, Mark, so there you go. And if I have your permission, I would like to put your contact information in there if people in the ROI group would like to contact you later.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm going to move a little further than my slides. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the history of KB Media, and then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the web leads, whether it be organic or paid. I think we need to spend a little bit more time on that. It is a very controversial, to say the least, area of web marketing, and I think the more time we can spend with Jonathan, the more we can come out of this this presentation with a little bit more information. So KB Media is a graphics firm that was started in 2009, and prior to that, I was the owner of Kelly Signs up until 2006. I met Bruce actually a couple of times. I think Bruce also works with Benjamin Greenberg on several occasions with some of his real estate projects. Kelly Signs was basically a real estate and commercial development sign company that really specialized in those areas. Later on in the years, we went into illuminated signage and election signage and that sort of thing. But how that company was created was in real estate and development signage. So we've worked with accounts like Richcraft, Minto, and many wonderful other builders in the area. And I believe that it was an opportunity for me to work with some people that had incredible experience in the area, and they allowed me to work alongside some of their agencies at the time. In 2006, after finishing working with Mr. Greenberg at Kelly Signs, I decided to move towards a more boutique oriented graphic design organization where our designers would work directly hand in hand with our clients. And if you'd like to go to the next slide, Bruce, would work directly hand in hand with our clients in these particular areas that you're seeing here. Obviously, design branding always starts at the up forefront. And signage, because of my background, is a huge part of it. Leading on to communications, copywriting, digital marketing, multimedia. So our designers really work as a small marketing department for all our clients. So our clients don't have to go to see 5 or 6 different companies. They come and see us, and we're able to communicate with them on all aspects of our project that they're working on.
Mark, if I can interrupt for 1 second,
Yes.
your company did a simple billboard for one of Brad Cartier's projects, I think out in
Yes.
Rockland or at Hammond Hill, and
Yes.
and Brad was amazed that signs or billboard signs or street curbside signs still work, and it doesn't all have to be digital, does it?
No, absolutely not. And another reason why we went into this area with our clients, we didn't want to sell widgets to our clients. We wanted to sell our clients what they needed, and if we see a client that is better purposed with development signage than they are with commercial media ads or web marketing, we'll recommend what we think will give them the best results. And the more we can work with our clients, the better we can give them better results. So our boutique concept or business model is really to develop a long-term relationship with our clients where we can change with them, we can scale up with them, we can scale down with them if necessary. It just puts us in a better position and know our clients a lot more. But Bruce, again on that billboard aspect of it, yes, absolutely. What Brad was describing that he needed really fit that circle, and obviously our team is experienced in that area as well. And if we can just go to the next slide. So again, our company started off in 2009, and 2009 was a change in our marketplace. It was a change that we were really getting into the digital world. So whether websites for sure already had a fairly large play, but algorithms within the web world were really coming to play at that time. So we began changing our model a little bit more and getting a little bit more emphasis on the web world to give our clients a little bit better result long term with what they were trying to market. It's not all about having a pretty website. I would say it's more about having an organically correct website. It's more about really making your website simple to navigate. And those are the elements that our team spent a lot of time on. If we can just go to the next slide, Bruce. So our approach really was to build the tools for our clients that were the most useful for them, not the tools that KB Media had on the shelf, really working with understanding what the needs were of our clients and then providing them with the tools to do it. For sure, in 2010, web agencies were saying that, your website is your right arm and can do a lot of different services for you. And sometimes at that point in time, I believe a lot of agencies really spread themselves thin on what their abilities really were. Most agencies were small and nimble at that time, 4 or 5 people. There's only so much that those 4 or 5 people can deal with, and I don't think it was always to the advantage of our clients. If we could go to the next slide, Bruce. So since 2009, our team has continued to grow. We surround ourselves with professionals in the area. We're our web developers, our copywriters, our designers, our fabricators, our 3D artists, really help us bring what our clients need to the forefront and give us an opportunity to be successful with our clients. If we're not successful, then our clients aren't going to be successful, and if our clients aren't successful, we're not successful. So the people that we're bringing around the table with us really help us make us stronger for our clients.
That is a heck of a team, and if you just look everybody at the titles of these people, it really means that Mark and his team can bring full court press to this. It's not just building you a website that sits there and looks pretty. It does a heck of a lot more.
And if we can go to the next slide. So we've worked on really understanding what our client's message is, whether it be visual or whether it be in words. If we can get our client's message across, we think we have a better chance of making their product more successful, whether that be real estate, whether that be widgets. We're looking at creating a message that will give our clients the most value possible. And if we go to the next slide. And the last, I'll introduce Jonathan into the mix. And Jonathan will be talking about your website and really get into the strengths of everything.
Thanks, Mark. I think Craig is with us. He's our web wizard. Maybe talk a bit about websites first, and then I can talk about generating leads, which I'm guessing is really the part that most of you are probably interested about, driving those visitors and converting them. So Craig, are you with us?
I am. I was just trying to get to unmute. And I laugh when you say wizard, because I was on a chat with somebody the other day and I had to enter my name. I entered Merlin just to see if they were paying attention. So look, thanks for having us. And Bruce, we started this chat probably last week through a couple email exchanges. And my portion here is going to be pretty skinny in the sense that, many people in this group may already have a website. And so my take is, look, what does a website need to do? It needs to answer 3 questions really easily. Who are you? What do you do? And how do we reach you at its fundamental level? And, who we are, about us, history, staff profiles, all this information should be available to the user, because oddly enough, if we go and look at our analytics for visitors on our website, you'd be surprised how many visits the staff profiles get. People want to know that 100%. You're real people, that it's we say, it's high tech, but it's still, high touch is not the right word, but it's still a personable, you want to know who it is you're working with. You want to see them, put a face to the name.
Long before the pandemic hit, I was telling people that put faces on your website. I started handcrafting my own websites in 1992 or 93. They were pretty primitive, but even back then, I could put a picture on the internet and say, look, here's so-and-so I'm working with. And in the 30 years since, faces still count. And then the pandemic hit and we couldn't really meet face to face. So people like to deal with people they like and trust. And faces are really important. I mean, you guys are experts in this. I'm just a lowly engineer. But if you have an ad that has a bunch of text in it, and you have an ad that has a face in it, it really doesn't matter. The one with the face in it is going to outperform in almost all cases. So when I saw your slides, and I saw those all those very nice faces, you know, from Mark on throughout the organization, I realized that you guys understand that.
Yeah, yeah, people are visual.
Yeah,
In
they like to
today's
know
day
who
and
they're
age.
dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, really the three key points to look at, you know, I said, who are you, what do you do, and how to reach you. That's where we start. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into play with web development, web design, and building, and it's very much like you know, you're building an apartment or whatnot, right? You start with the blueprints, you go to the artist rendition, then you go to the build. So some would say more or less complicated. Web can be very complicated, but we always try to kind of bring things down and simplify so that we can achieve the best results without doodads and flashing lights and things scrolling on the screen. Keep it simple and clean, and that really resonates well with the visitor.
So Craig, one question that I get all the time is adding functionality to websites. So it's a little bit more than your business card. And by functionality, I mean, we heard from Tim that his buildings are pre-leased 100% even before they're ready for occupancy. So people, you know, I coach a number of the mini storage businesses in Canada, the United States, and they all want now to be able to reverse out as much of the work as possible to the clients. In other words, can they go to your website? Can they sign up for an apartment? Can they sign a lease? Can they rent a storage locker? Can they rent a storage shed? You know, so how much functionality are you typically building into websites these days?
Well, and it really depends on the client. What's the purpose of the website? What is their need? What's their requirement? And it kind of segues into the next point that I have is you know, the tech, the tools, or the stack. At the end of the day, the clients don't care what's going on in the back end, as long as what's going on in the back end serves to serve the client, if that makes sense. You know, in reality, there's two questions to ask once you've kind of considered the first 3 points: is what is it that you want people to do when they get to your website? But more importantly, you just touched on that, is what do people want to do when they get to your website? So they don't always align, but if you want to allow that registration, a functionality is anything that is beyond content, right? Whether that's signing up for a newsletter, whether that's registering for an online seminar, whether that's buying widgets or wheelbarrows or rakes or hockey sticks or socks. So whatever functionality, you just have to be careful that you don't get to the point where you confuse bells and whistles and doodads with functionality, because when the user is confused, I get that look on my face like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to go to the next one. You're competing with 6 billion other websites out there. So it needs to be clean and simple and clear and concise what it is that you want the user to do, or what the user needs to do once they get to your website. So yeah,
Craig, is that a real number, 6 billion websites?
Yeah, probably. There's a lot. Yeah. You know, whatever, 1 billion websites, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. So yeah, so it's really important, which when the visitor is on your website, that user experience is appropriate and clean and concise, and you're not confusing them, because it's so easy, right? Google is your friend, but also your enemy. So I'm searching for something, I've got thousands of results. If I click on the first one, I'm going to leave right away. Google knows that. And I'm going to go back in my screen, back to the previous search results, and go to the next site. Oh, yeah, okay, I know what these guys do now. All right, I want to rent a storage locker. Click on the button. Here's my name. This is the size I'm looking for, and pay. And it's done. Now, this kind of leads into what Jonathan's going to talk about, is you can have a beautiful website, It can be very clean and concise and clear what to do. The navigation is done properly. The site works well on mobile devices. You would hope that it does in today's day and age, but there still are a lot of websites out there that don't, that still think that 1996 was current enough. Look, nobody has a car from 1996 maybe, but there are websites that are pretty old out there too. So the next part of the puzzle, if you will, is now what, right? I've got the website, I've got the functionality. Where do I go? What do I do? Jonathan, I don't know if you're gonna. Yeah, there we go.
This
You're off
is
mute.
and this is where I usually jump in the projects with our clients. They got a fresh new branding, great new functional website, and now they want to monetize it. They want to drive traffic in order to get the return on their investment and get the website shown. So a website without visitors, it's worth probably nothing. And often, a bit less these days, but often what happens after the website is launched is an afterthought. As they used to say, build it and they will come. Well, it doesn't really work like this on the web. You gotta work or have a plan in place afterwards in order to get those revenues or those sales up. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So basically, there's three main components. The first is you need to have a clearly defined goal on your website. What's the purpose of the website? Is it to rent a storage locker? Well, if it is, then everything on the website, from the buttons to the call to actions to everything, needs to focus on renting storage space. Of course, you'll have contact page on each website and you'll have different designs, but in terms of defining your goal and getting attracting visitors, and especially make that conversions, have that step, it really needs, the website really needs to focus into one direction. And sometimes whenever websites aren't converting, this is where we see, well, there's multiple goals and people are overwhelmed and they're not too sure what to do. And this is why websites like Amazon's work great. You get in, you buy, you get out, and it works perfectly. So the same thing is with websites. It needs to be one clear goal. And then you need to work to attract those visitors. There's a bunch of strategies that we put in place with our clients, but the first discussion that we usually have is, what's your goal? What do you want? How many sales do you want? We have some small clients who advertise $5, $10, $20 a day, and we have clients that goes upwards of 10,000 a week. So it really depends on the volume. If you have, for example, 50 storage units that you need to rent, well, when those are rent, you're out of inventory. So there's no need to push ads and get more people unless you want a waiting list. We have a client on the other end that's selling alarm system. So it doesn't really matter, like, it doesn't matter to him if he advertises 2, 4, 6, 8K a month or a week, because basically the more he advertises, the more he sells alarm system, and he can sell an indefinite amount. So we're just scaling the ads, and we're really cost conscious about the cost of each sale. So we're controlling the cost of the sales. And this is how basically we calculate the return on investment. So the simple formula that we use is the budget that you have in place and any additional fees divided by the revenues that you'll get. So it'll always depend. Sometimes online, it won't be as good of a strategy. Like Mark said earlier, if you're selling books at $14 and it costs you already $11, there's not a big margin to advertise online and still get a profit. On the other end, like our alarm system client, for them, like the break-even point for a sell is below $250. So it gives us a healthy budget for us to work with. We've taken this company from 280 and 290 last year per sales. And a couple of weeks ago, we just broke a record. It was $106 in marketing budget per sell. So we try to work with our client to calculate that return on investment, or what's our margin of errors, whether any strategies, like whether we do content creation, search engine stuff, build the reputation, send newsletter content. Like there's a bunch of strategies that we can push, but we always need to keep in mind what is it costing the client, and what's the potential revenue or what's coming on the other end. And sometimes a lot of agencies try to focus on metrics. They'll say, because one of the biggest questions we have is clients telling us, well, how much should I advertise? Like, what's a good budget for me? Well, it really depends on your goal. And we tend to not really focus on the budget, and we tend to focus on the outcome. So then when we give you a clear picture, well, let's say our goal is to rent 50 storage units. So that's our goal. So as soon as we start the campaigns, after a couple of weeks, we'll get those conversion numbers in, and we'll crunch the numbers, and we'll have a good idea how much it costs, how much efforts we need to put in to rent one storage unit. And then it's just a matter of scaling and getting those costs down. We can switch to the other side, please.
Just before we do that, Jonathan, I have to say that, at least in my experience, the things that you guys are masters of, search engine optimization, keyword-rich content, improving Google rankings, doing some advertising through Google pay-per-click, social ads on social media. I would recommend to everybody on this call, and the people who will listen to it on a recorded basis, probably not to do that on your own. And the reason for that is I'm sure I could spend $50,000 on Facebook ads and not sign up a single coaching client. You know, I mean, it's just such a difficult thing to understand how to do search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising, and the other social ads that Jonathan is referring to. It's very, very, very important to do. So what I would strongly recommend is you don't just rely on organic. You also have to do some paid advertising. I get that, but if you're going to put some paid advertising into marketing, you better put it through an organization like KB Media that actually will get you an ROI. Jonathan used that term a few times, and I really wanted to salute you for that, Jonathan.
Thanks. And yes, that's true. And I mean, even for us, we get mentorship and training and upwards. I'm in a bunch of masterminds to keep up to date on what's the new changes on Facebook and Google for advertising. So, I mean, my info is coming directly from Facebook employees and big players in the States and Australia and Canada and the market. So it's really easier for me to have a clear picture of what's coming in 3 months on those platforms than someone doing it by himself at home. And the other thing is we're managing a lot of budgets for a lot of clients. So whenever we take on a new client that has maybe $1,000 a month as a budget, for us, it's only a small percentage of our whole ad spend as a company. So it gives us a good overview in a lot of industries. And sometimes there's a lot of things that we can see what's working for one client.
I have to stop you there, Jonathan, just for one more minute. I apologize. I want everybody to just listen very carefully to what Jonathan just said. That is probably, at least for me, the most important thing that I've heard today in this part of our presentation. And that is that this group, KB Media, is not just about building pretty websites. What it is it's a true marketing agency. And a lot of people, if you ask them, are you a marketing agency? They'll say yes, but they're not. What they do is they can make you a nice letterhead. They can make you a nice business card. They can make you a nice website. But what Jonathan is saying is he will take some of your money that you budget and he will spend it for you effectively. That's what an agency does. And that's what an agency used to do back in the 1960s. You know, wasn't there a series on TV called Mad Men? That's what they did. Well, of course, not with the internet. So I just want everybody to focus on that. If you're going to spend $1,000 a month, or you're going to spend $10,000 a month, or $100,000 a month on this kind of digital advertising and reach, you want to do it through an agency because they actually know what they're doing. I really want to emphasize that. And I'm just so pleased that you guys had time to come on today and share this with us. Thank you.
No worries. And yes, so basically the amount is different. And as a company, we don't really work with long-term contracts. We're all performance-based. So if there's no results, there's no clients for us at the end of the line. So we're not signing our clients to 12 months agreements. As far as ads goes, it's on a monthly basis, and the day that we don't deliver the results that you're expecting, you're free to walk out the door. But we have a really, really good client retention, and mainly because we focus on the outcome for our client. I mean, at the end of the day, how much did it cost you, and how many sales have you done? So it's really, really revenue focused. So we could jump. This is just to give you an idea with the software that we're working with, and a bit of our process. But if we could jump to the last slide. I think this is where, I think this is where a lot of people are confused, or it's a lot of info whenever you're trying to generate leads and traffic. There's 7 steps that we use for every client, and they're really easy to remember, and they're really easy to implement. The first one is we do an audit. We look at your overall marketing strategy, what you've been doing, what's working, what's not, what's on your website. I've seen a question in the chat from Belinda that's asking, is it better a landing page or a whole website? Well, it really depends. I mean, sometimes we can do much more with a landing page rather than the whole website. If you don't need the whole website, it really depends what's your goal and what you're selling and what kind of functionality do we need. But we have clients doing probably in the 6 or high 6 numbers of revenues with just a single landing page. So we've seen both worlds, and we got clients with the best website that isn't built the right way and isn't converting. So it really depends what the goal is. As far as search engine optimization strategies, basically our work is to improve your rankings in on Google. So we're looking at your website, we're comparing it to competitors in your market, we're building a list of keywords, and we're making sure that your ranking improves for those keywords. This can be achieved by a number of ways. Some of the most popular, Google My Business profile. If you got a brick and mortar company and an address, you need a Google My Business and an optimized Google My Business profile running. There's also all kind of listings, and we need to get the word out on your company. So all those lists, when I talk about listing, it's more like those yellow pages, profile page, all those free databases online where you want your company to show up. So we try to increase those, so it's a lot more visibility at the end of the day. Then there's also add relevant content on your website. So the content that we're suggesting or we're adding on clients' website at this stage, it's to improve the rankings. So it's to improve keywords, it's to get keyword volumes, improve those ranking, and trying to rank different page for different keyword. There's a lot of misconception online when you're working on a page for SEO, but basically one page is one keyword. Of course, it's going to pop up for different keywords and all kinds of other stuff. But at the end of the day, when we're focusing in the back end, we got one keyword per page. And this is the right way to think about it. Then we'll try to enhance reputation as part of SEO strategy. So we'll want to get Google reviews, Facebook reviews. We'll want to get good comments, because a lot of people are still buying or are still registering for events and stuff based on those testimonials. So we'll need to get those up. And basically afterwards, we're going to look at the ideal funnel. So when we talk about funnel, is what's the route that we want the user to take? Is he seeing a ad first and then going on your website and then making an action? So if that's the goal, then we'll lead it through it and make sure that we're not seeing a lot of drop-offs throughout that route. And we'll look at those drop-off numbers. So if there's 100 people that are seeing your ads, and then we get a 30% conversion, so there's 30 people on your website, we'll want to make sure that at the end of the day, you got maybe 3 or 4 good leads out of those initial 100 people. So we'll look at all the drop-offs throughout the funnel. Then comes in a lot of promotion and content strategies. 4 and 5 are pretty much tied in together. There's all those organic stuff that you can put in place. So it's free to post on any social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. This is all free. It just takes time, but it's all free. So we do it for some clients, although we tend to specialize mostly on the paid stuff, because the organic stuff, anybody can do it, and it changes a lot. You can have a Facebook page with 50,000 followers, but at the end of the day, there's probably only 2,000 to 3,000 that are seeing all your messages and that are getting the info. Facebook controls the number of times that you're seeing stuff. Only on my own account, I'm probably following 400 or 500 pages, but in my regular feed, I probably see 4 or 5 of them. And some of them once a month, some of them twice a week, some of them once a day because I'm clicking and making action. So there's no control over that reach on those free organic strategies. Then we go to the paid side, but on the paid side, the beauty is you control what users see and you control the amount of time they're seeing it. So we usually work with a 3-step funnel. So basically there's your cold reach. So this is building brand awareness, talking about your brand, the message is short, the visual is catchy. And then once they get in or they go on your website, but they don't click on your form or register, we'll go into that phase where it's kind of the hot and cold audience where they've seen your stuff, they've heard about you, but they haven't converted yet. So we'll probably pitch more detailed ads because we know they're already interested. So we're jumping into remarketing. And then at the end, there's those stuff that we put in to just close the deal, basically. They've been on your website 5 times in the last month, still haven't bought a thing. We'll just try to get testimonials out and videos and show them other people using the product, the service, and basically close the deal. So it also, the ads and the efforts that we'll do on the paid side will basically depend where is your customer on that journey. Have they heard about you before? Is it the first time that they're seeing your stuff? Or on the other side, have they been on your website 10 times in the last week? That goes into analyzing the results. We always look, all of our paid clients, we look at their accounts once a week, at least look at the numbers. What's trending? Are we seeing good results, bad results? And we make a lot of adjustment on the fly to those accounts. When you're investing money, it's good to keep an eye on your performance and how is it working. A lot of our small clients, we got a meeting once a month. We go back to the results. We go back to the next strategies that we're going to put up. So we try to really take what's been working and what's not working, and just modify the strategy and move forward. So it's always pretty much alive. And number 7, like I said, it's optimizing on the fly. So it's a rinse and repeat process. So whenever we got a good strategy running, we'll make sure to drain it all the way, and then we'll do something new. So for our alarm system, at some point we were getting leads or people interested in a new alarm system at $40-50 a lead. Which was pretty good. They were closing at about 20-30%. So we were still inside our target. We tried something new, and all of a sudden we were generating leads at $8. So we shut down everything else. We went to that $8, drained it for 3-4 weeks, and then the price got back up to $50. So we went back to those funnels that were working before, and we're working on a completely new strategy, new ads, new campaigns. So that will change in time, and we don't really fix something that's not broken. So as long as it's generating good results at a good price, we'll keep it running. And whenever it dies down, that's where we pitch in and get something new. So that's pretty much our whole process for generating traffic. I think it's, like I said, it's somewhere. Sometimes it's lost in translation. Some people don't pay enough attention to it, because you can have the most beautiful website, but if there's no one seeing it, it's tough at the end of the day.
So that was a fantastic presentation. I want to just again underline one thing at the end that Jonathan said, and that was that, you know, organic, you know, might have worked better in the 90s and the early 2000s than it does today. You know, who knows how many websites there are out there, how many people on social media there are out there, how many people are really speaking into an echo chamber. So unfortunately, guys, I hear people come to me, you know, I'm going to do a tech startup, I'm going to do this kind of a business. And yeah, I've got a marketing plan. What's your marketing plan? I'm going to post to Twitter. I'm going to post to Instagram. I'm going to put a 7-second video on TikTok. Yeah, okay. But you know, that today with so many people talking and blaring, and we've all got loudspeakers yelling at each other. So I really think the process that Jonathan and his colleagues have outlined today is really important. You have to you have to budget some money, you know, to talk about your product, your service, and broaden your audience and do some sales and generate leads and do some conversions and get some sales. It's the only way today, in my opinion, to get your message out there. And Jonathan, you hit it right out of the park. Now I've kept everybody 4 minutes over time. Usually we hit on time. We didn't today. It's 1:34 Eastern time. I want to thank, I just have to thank a few people. I want to thank my sponsors again, Steve Shepard from SKS Law, Matt Slobodian from Canada ICI, our speakers today, Tim Streek, and of course, KB Media, the boys, Mark and his colleagues did a fantastic job. I want to thank everybody who's listening today live and the people who will listen to it broadcast. Next month is Christmas, it's family time. We're not going to do an ROI group then, so I'll see you all in the new year. And one last thing, remember to set some goals before 2022 hits, okay? Set some goals for next year and try and achieve them. Be safe, everybody. I'll see you later.